I'm Jennifer Johnson, and I raise sheep for their wool. So, our farm is my full time occupation. I generate income for the farm in 3 ways. The first way is I sell the wool from our sheep to people that make things with it, whether it's spinning it into yarn or needle felting or whatever. So that's the first income stream. The second income stream is I sell breeding stock to other farms that want to incorporate the soft Shetland genetics into their flock. And then my third income stream is I'm an authorized Magicraft dealer. So Magicraft is a company in New Zealand, and they make spinning wheels and fiber prep equipment. So I bring that product over here to the farm, and then I ship it all over the U.S. to spinners and crafters, makers. In addition to selling the products on my website, which is, I'm an online business, I also do fiber festivals. And these are weekend events where I take all my product and all of my fixturing and everything, and I set up a booth and then get to interact with people face to face, talking about the farm and the wool, and it's just really fun. I bring the whole string of Magicraft wheels and fiber prep tools and, let people spin on the wheels, and it's just a real blast. I love it. And it takes a ton of planning, a lot of preparation, but it's extremely rewarding, and I just find it very gratifying to do fiber festivals. So in a few days, we'll be leaving for the biggest fiber festival that we participate in, which is called the Rhinebeck, or the Dutchess County Sheep and Wool Festival. It's an enormous festival. If you've never been, they run 20,000 people through every day. It runs Saturday and Sunday. Just enormous, and we're busy the whole time, and there are so many people there that we know that stop by to say hello, and it's really wonderful. I just love it. And I can't believe it's almost here, because it just seems like we just got everything. I mean, it just feels like we just did last year's, but yeah, so that's coming up. So I'm picking up a cargo van on Thursday that we rent for this event, because I actually bring wheels to sell, wheels for people to take home in addition to my demo wheels. Pack that up Thursday and then leave bright and early on Friday morning for the trip. It's about 6 hours to get to the festival Fairgrounds from where we live. So I'm very excited. This year, what I decided to do is I created a playlist, and I've made 4 videos, I think, so far, all about what I'm doing to prepare for the festival. So things I'm going to be putting in my booth and stuff like that. One project I'm going to talk about today is the market bag. Now, I talked about plying the yarn for the market bag in a prior video. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the stitches that went into making this super cool bag. This bag is actually finished, and this is made with the yarn that I plied in that video. I've started another one too, so I'm still working on this one. But I thought it'd be fun to go through the stitches that are used to make up this bag. It's called the Monteagle Bag. And it's just every stitch in this thing is just really interesting and fun, and I love it. I struggled the first time I made this bag. It was a challenge because the stitches were new to me. I'd never done anything like it before. So I thought I would make this video. If you want to make the bag, it might make it easier for you for the first time, or these stitches are kind of cool. There might be something in here you want to incorporate into something that you're making. So this is the book that the pattern is from. There's some beautiful things in here that I have yet to make. See if I can find it. Yeah, so here's the pattern. I made a copy of the pattern. I have that on a piece of paper that I use. Okay. So it says 3.5 ounces of yarn. They actually say linen yarn, which I just, the yarn I make this with is all over the place, and it works out just fine. And let's see, size 10 needles. I start with double pointed needles, and you cast on 72 stitches, and then you add 1 stitch every 6 to get to 84 stitches total. I use double pointed needles to start out, and then after I do the increase, so there's an increase you have to do. You knit 3 rows after you do your cast on, and then you increase 1 stitch every 6 stitches. Once I go to that, I'll switch over to my circular needle, which is kind of a junky blue plastic thing, but it really works great for this project. All right, so let's start watching me knit. So I was knitting this in the wool cave for the first couple scenes, the first couple stitches. And then this past week, we made a sheep delivery down near New York City. So it was about a 5-6 hour drive both ways to get down there. So Rich was driving the truck because we brought the horse trailer. And so I was able to get a lot of knitting in and put the GoPro around my neck to do the recording of it. It worked out great, though. I'm really happy with how the footage turned out. So let's start watching the knitting process, and I'll talk a little bit about each of the stitches. Once you've done your 4 regular knit rows, this is the first interesting stitch that you do. It's called a right cross. And what you do is you put your needle into the next 2 stitches on the left, do a double wrap. So here, I'm doing it right here. Wrap it around twice, knit that, and then put your needle in the first stitch, do another double wrap. So you've created 4 wraps around the needle on the right with 4 stitches from the left. And then you just go all the way around and repeat this same stitch. So it looks like I'm not using the yarn for the bottom part here that I applied. This might be a skein that was left over from the last time I did it. After you do, there's a right cross. Oh, there's my mother's ring. I was using it for a stitch marker because I guess I didn't have anything. All right, so now this is the left cross. So you do, first row is the right cross, and then you knit around, and I'll show you that here in a second. But this is called the left cross. This one is a little bit trickier. And you can see here with my left hand, I'm pulling the stitches down because it's difficult to get the needle in, I find. So you go in the back of the second stitch, double wrap, knit that. And then you go into 2 stitches on the left. And it's just a little bit tight because you've already knit into that back stitch. Double wrap that. And that's your left cross. So then you just go ahead and do that all the way around. I have to pull that stitch down to get the needle in. This is one of the times where I'm thankful I'm using these silly old plastic needles because the tips are really pointy, they're pointy, so they're good for getting into some of these tricky stitches. So here what I'm doing is after each of these cross stitches, you do 1 row of just knitting, but what you do is you only knit into one of those wraps. So when you pull the stitch off of your needle, there's a spider, you get a longer stitch, and it's really gratifying because it goes really fast. Each stitch is like 1 inch long. There's 5 of these cross stitches. So you start with a right, and then you knit a row, then a left, then a right, then a left, then a right. So there's 5 cross stitches at the bottom of the bag. And here's that pretty blue that I like so much. I don't think I have any. I think maybe when I go to Rhinebeck, I'll see if I can find a vendor that's got a pretty blue, because I don't think people liked spinning this, which is why there isn't very much of it. I think it was a really short staple, and it kept on, and it's really coarse, so I think it kept breaking while people were trying to spin it. Can't win them all. Okay, so this stitch here is, I think it's called the horizontal stitch. I'm going to take a quick look here. Yeah, so it's called the horizontal stitch. So the first stitch in the row, you knit in the front and the back of the stitch. And then you take the leftmost stitch and put it over on the left needle. And then you reach into the back, knit into that stitch with a single wrap, and then you put your needle back through those 2 stitches with another single wrap. Take those off the needle and then transfer 1 stitch over. Go into the back, knit. And I love this. This stitch is really pretty. It makes it's called the horizontal stitch, right? It makes a a horizontal, almost looks like a stockinette stitch. I'm holding the bag wrong, so. Right here. So it kind of breaks up that all those cross stitches. So you do 2 rows of that all the way around. There's no knitting in between. It's just the 2 rows of the horizontal stitch. The only thing about it is that the cross stitches are nice and loose, and that horizontal stitch is kind of a tighter stitch. So it's sort of, it kind of like, you can see it kind of like stays in a little bit. I don't know how to describe it. It's just, it's it's just a little bit tighter, so it's kind of puts a bump in the bag, which is whatever. All right, so now here we are in the truck on the way to New York City, and this is a really fun stitch. This is called the veil stitch, or the fancy throw, I think is what she called it. Fancy cross throw. So you put the needle in the stitch and you wrap around the outside of the needles, not on the inside. You do that 4 times, and then you bring it across in between the 2 needles to get a stitch out of it. So what you've got is this twisted little coil of yarn. So after you do a row of that, and this really goes through yarn really fast, then you knit. And this is the tricky thing about doing the knitting stitch right after this fancy throw, is that the stitches are really kind of loosey-goosey on the needles, and they kind of want to fall off really easily because there's nothing really holding them on, right? Because there's all that loose openness. So you got to be careful there, especially the first time you knit. So I think you knit 3 rows after you do that fancy cross stitch, the throw stitch, I mean. All right, so now what am I doing? This is the cast off stitch. So after you've done the veil stitch, which is these 2, then there's this, it's really pretty. It's got like a twisted element to it, so it twists the stitches a little bit. So you do, pretty sure you do 2 rows of that one also, this cast off stitch. So what you do, I will tell you. You do a double wrap when you knit. Double wrap around, and then the prior stitch has got a double wrap also. You grab the 4th stitch over and pull that across, and that tightens it up really nicely. It makes a nice rim around the edge, like a trim. Okay, so I did those. It's called a cast off stitch. I didn't cast off with that stitch. I just do a regular cast off with this. Okay. So what you do is, here I am marking off 14 stitches at the beginning. And for some reason, she has you purl those 14 stitches. I'm not sure why. I don't know why. What color am I purling there? I don't know. Maybe it blends in with the handle nicer. All right, so you purl the 14 stitches, that's what I'm doing here. There's the directions for the pattern on my left thigh. I pretty much have this pattern memorized, but I still refer back every so often. All right, so you finish purling those 14 stitches. And then you cast off 28 stitches. And what I do is I count those 28 stitches, and then I put that marker in between the 28th and the 29th stitch so that I can just bind off and not count and just, a little free for all there. And I really love this part of the bag. That big fluffy white cottony looking cloud of wool really stands out. Let's see if I can show you where it is in the bag. Yeah, right here. All right, so here I am just casting off. So you cast off the 28 stitches. Okay, so then after you cast off the 28, then I count 14 stitches, put the marker in there so that I know that I'm at 14. And then you knit these. Stitches. So you knit 14. That's the other side of the handle in the bag, right? Because you've got. So these are the 28 that you cast off, and then these are the 14 that you keep on. So then you knit those 14 stitches, and then you cast off another 28. So you transfer those to the holder. I guess that's so that it just makes it easier to cast off the balance of the stitches. I like that white and green together. So the stitches that you're casting off from is a twisted stitch. So it's a twisted stitch. So that's a little bit tricky. I struggled with that in the beginning, and I can't remember why. But you cast that up. I think it's because if I was working with a thinner yarn, for whatever reason, it seemed to want me to knit two stitches together. You could easily make that mistake. I think that the twisting squishes them together. I don't know. All right, so you go ahead and you cast off these 28 stitches until you come back around. I think I have my mother's ring as the mark. Yeah, see how they're like squished together? So I'm casting off to my mother's ring. Not my mother's ring. This is a ring. It's actually our whole family. It's got me, Rich, Andrew, and Will, our birthstones. All right, so that's the last cast off. Put my ring back on. Actually, I have to cast off this stitch as well. So I'll be left knitting 14 stitches on both sides, and that's the width of the handle. I just count it to make sure. And then the handle is just a knit stitch. So you just knit 18 inches of handle, and that 18 inches is a stretched length. So you pull the handle to its full extension, and that's when you will do your 3 needle bind off is what they call it. The other thing I do when I'm at this point is I switch to my bamboo double pointed needles. There's not as much stuff flying around. When you got the circular needles and you're doing this, you've got that piece, that stiff piece, and it just gets in the way. So I just do it with my bamboo. Look at me doing my fancy continental stitch. It does not feel natural to me to do that way. but every once in a while I like to use it just to keep the stitch in my fingers. And that's just a quick, this is the New York State Thruway. Our route coming home, we go along the Mohawk River for a portion of it. To get down to the city. It's actually, where we went was a little bit further south than Rhinebeck. It's the same route as the Rhinebeck Fiber Festival. We passed the Rhinecliff Bridge. I was like, oh, it's too bad we have to come back down. But I love this color yellow. That's why I recorded this little section here. I just feel like it's really pretty. This was wool that I bought at the Adirondack Fiber Festival from that Dirty Girl Yarns. I think she had it in her sale kit. I can't remember, but I just love it. It's so bright and cheerful. And I like it too because there's a portion of it where it was plied with white. Which I love that. I always find it remarkable when I come across a plied section where the two colors are the same. Like the odds of that happening. Because it's two different bobbins from two different wheels, two different spinners. So it's kind of cool. I like that golden red color. It reminds me of like Princeton or something. I don't know if that's their colors, but it's got like an Ivy League-ish look to it. So here's how I measure it. Like I said, you extend it and stretch it to get to the 18 inches. So we're not even anywhere close. What are we at there? 8 inches. A little bit more to go. This takes a surprisingly long amount of time. Oh, look at those big bumps in there. Here they are. Oh, no, wait a minute. That must be this one here. I just love that. You know what? It just makes it like, it's just not boring. You know, you never know what the next color is going to be. And if you keep your project bag, if you keep your wool in there and don't look at it, then it's like a surprise as you're knitting. All right, let's skip ahead here. All right, so I'm stretching it out, and that's the 18 inches right there. So I don't have any audio from the footage where I'm knitting, and that's because I'm in the truck and it's kind of loud. Plus that we had the radio on, and I don't have I can't like play like Elton John or whatever on my videos because that's trademark infringement. And so if there's any music playing, I can't use it. So I just eliminated the audio on this. All the audio that I use, the music I use on my YouTube videos are supplied by YouTube. They have a library of songs that you can pick from, which is why a lot of the times I reuse music on videos because there's just they don't have a ton of songs that I like to use for my stuff. All right, so here I am. I'm taking those stitches off of the storage needle. I can't remember what it's called. Technical words for it. And this is going to be a 2 needle bind off. So I'm going to use 2 of my double pointed needles, and then I use my circular needle for pulling the stitches off. Because it's so pointed, it seems like it's a lot easier for doing this 3 needle bind off. So what you do is you pick up 1 stitch on the one needle, 1 on the other, and what we're doing is we're fusing the handle together. Yeah, so this is the 3 needle bind up. It does have a bit of a bump here. There's like a kind of like a bar of stitching, but it's okay. It doesn't really affect anything. And that's how you join the handle to the bag. So you wrap it around, pull both stitches off the needle, and then bring the stitch from the far right on the right side over just like a regular cast on. There's that green and yellow, which I think reminds me of Girl Scouts. I think one of my sisters was whatever the rank is where you're in a green dress and the yellow on the badges. That's just what that reminds me of. There also might have been a Girl Scout cookie that had that color code. I don't remember. There's that big puffy white. That was kind of hard to knit around. It kept on getting caught in the stitch. So the only thing I have to do, well, there's a couple things you have to do after this is done. I'm going to skip ahead here. So I've got my preschooler scissors. These are the scissors I bought for the boys. I've got tons of these because they had to have a new set every year. Heaven forbid. I love them because they don't take up a lot of space, and that tip is nice and blunt, so I don't have to worry about hurting myself when I'm rooting around in my bag. All right, so I'll have to weave that piece in. But the next thing I have to do is I have to open up that twisted veil stitch. So what happens is, that's the one where you wrap it 4 times around the needle. The coil kind of stays put, so you'll have this little bump of coiled yarn that you have to pull out. You have to uncoil it so that you have a nice long stitch. This is all one stitch from the 4 wraps, and then those 4 strands, or those 2 strands are twisted 4 times. So it's a nice strong stitch. It gives you some nice stretch to the bag, but you have to do this thing where you open it up. It takes a little bit of time. And it's an irritating feeling on your hand, especially if some of the fiber isn't nice and soft, which a lot of it isn't. I'm spoiled. Now, when I sew the bottom of the bag, you have to sew that. You have to join that manually. There's no stitches for that. I used to do it with the needle and yarn, the colored yarn. And I hate sewing. I would just do like a running stitch or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but I just hated it. I would leave bags for months because I didn't want to do that part. But crocheting it, I love to do. So this is a new thing I do, and it's just a simple single crochet. I pick up as much off the edge as I can. I get as close to the edge as I possibly can, and just throw it across the hook. Oh, I love it. And I love that pink and black. It reminds me of Good and Plenty candy from when I was a kid. Or something. I don't know. I'm also thinking maybe my grandmother used to have Brock's candies, and I think there was a coconut candy that had like layers, Neapolitan, I think it was called. That might be also what that's reminding me of. I love doing this. And I don't, that just so happened I had that size crochet needle. I couldn't even tell you what it is. Maybe catch a glimpse of it. But I can use a smaller one. It doesn't matter. Whatever. I happen to have that in the bag, so that's what I used. And it makes a really pretty edge. Okay, so that's the end of my knitting. Really, I think it's a much more decorative edge on the bag than what I was doing just by sewing it. So that's that. So the bag is going to be in the booth at Rhinebeck. I feel like it's more interesting and a novelty, just the fact that so many hands went into creating the bag from all the demo wheels. But it'll be in the booth, available for sale. I think I have 2 already made, and I might finish this one on the way down or at night or something. So I don't know. So anyway, so that's there. I don't know. I like it. So hopefully you enjoyed this, got some value, learned a couple of new stitches. I really appreciate you stopping by to watch the video, and I hope you can come back soon.